The airport terminal echoed with the sound of rushing footsteps. A young nurse, Ava Collins, sprinted past the crowd, her backpack slipping from her shoulder, her breath ragged after a 12-hour night shift. Her eyes burned with exhaustion, but what came next ripped her world open in ways she could never have imagined. She wasn't boarding her budget flight to Miami. She was being ushered onto a private jet, belonging to one of the most powerful billionaires alive, and by the time Ava realized the mistake, the engines were roaring, the ground vanishing beneath her feet. In that single heartbeat, Ava's life, built on sacrifice, grief, and responsibility for her little sister, was no longer her own. She was trapped 30,000 feet above the earth, face to face with a man whose haunted eyes carried secrets as heavy as her own. Would this be the biggest disaster of her life? Or the Ava Collins's sneakers slapped against the glossy airport floor as if they were screaming her exhaustion to the world. She had just come off a 12-hour night shift at St. Mary's Medical Center, her body aching, her eyelids heavy, her soul carrying more weight than her backpack ever could. For the 10th time, she glanced at her phone, gate 27A. Not again, she muttered under her breath. She was late, of course. She was always late, not because she was careless, but because her life didn't belong to her anymore. It belonged to her patients, to her bills, and most of all to her 17-year-old sister, Lily. 2 years ago, a car crash had stolen their parents, leaving Ava to shoulder everything: grief, responsibility, survival. At 26, she felt twice her age. This trip to Miami with her college roommate Sophia was supposed to be her first taste of freedom in years. Sunlight, sand, laughter, something that didn't smell like disinfectant or blood. But freedom had a way of slipping through Ava's fingers. Her phone buzzed. A message from Sophia. "Boarding now, where are you? Don't tell me you're bailing again." Ava forced a smile she didn't feel. "Almost there," she typed back, though her surroundings blurred from fatigue and she had no idea if she was even in the right terminal. That's when she noticed a small crowd gathering near a different gate, gate 27B. A polished sign read, "Private Aviation Lounge." Her tired brain made the connection it wanted to, not the right one. People plus gate equals boarding. A uniformed woman with a perfect bun smiled at her. "Miss Rivera, we've been expecting you." Ava opened her mouth to correct her, but another attendant swooped in. "Mr. Sterling is already on board, right this way." "Wait, I think." But her words were drowned out by the steady choreography of staff ushering her forward, relieving her of her bag and guiding her down a sleek walkway. The aircraft at the end wasn't a plane. It was a floating palace. Leather seats that gleamed like cream, polished wood that whispered luxury, a bar that looked like it belonged in a 5-star hotel. Ava froze. This wasn't her flight. This wasn't anyone's flight she could afford in 10 lifetimes. Before she could run, a voice cut through the quiet cabin. A man, his back to her, his tone casual but commanding. "You're late." He turned, and Ava's heart forgot how to beat. Ethan Sterling was younger than she expected, 30, maybe 31, but carried himself like a man who had lived twice as long. His suit probably cost more than Ava's entire annual salary. His sharp eyes, a stormy gray, flickered with confusion when they landed on her face. "You're not Camilla Rivera," he said flatly. Ava gripped her phone like a weapon. "No, I'm Ava Collins, and I know I'm on the wrong plane." But the door sealed behind her with a pressurized hiss, and outside the window, the ground crew was already stepping back. "Relax," Ethan said with unsettling calm. "We're cleared for takeoff." "Takeoff? No, I'm supposed to be in Miami." Panic crawled up her throat. Ethan tilted his head, a wry smile tugging at his mouth. "We're going to Rome." "Rome, as in Italy, I don't even have a passport." She blurted, then froze. She did, tucked in her backpack, a relic from a forgotten college trip. The engines roared to life, silencing her protests. The floor tilted. The world outside blurred. Ava's life, the one of double shifts, overdue rent and ramen dinners, slid out from under her as the plane lifted into the clouds. She pressed her palms into her lap, shaking. Ethan studied her, the faintest crease of curiosity in his otherwise controlled expression. "What do you do, Miss Collins?" "I'm a nurse," she answered before thinking. "Aiku, and I have a sister. Lily, she depends on me." Something flickered in his gaze at the word depends. He leaned back, loosening his tie as though responsibility was a language he understood all too well. "I know what it's like," Ethan said quietly, "carrying someone else's future on your shoulders." The cabin fell into a silence so thick Ava could hear her heartbeat over the hum of the jet. For the first time, she wasn't sure if she was more terrified of the situation or of the way this stranger's words reached the part of her she tried hardest to bury. When a flight attendant placed a crystal glass of water in her trembling hands, Ava realized something horrifying. She wasn't just trapped on the wrong plane. She was trapped in a story she couldn't control. And somehow, she already knew this was only the beginning. The hum of the engines pressed against Ava's chest like an invisible weight. Every vibration reminded her that she was no longer tethered to the ground, no longer in control. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, trying to make sense of the absurd truth. She was flying toward Rome with a billionaire stranger. Across from her, Ethan Sterling leaned back casually in his leather seat, but Ava noticed the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers drummed against the armrest when he thought she wasn't watching. He wasn't nearly as unshakable as he appeared. That realization both unsettled and comforted her. "Rome," Ava whispered, more to herself than to him. "Do you just decide to cross oceans whenever you feel like it?" Ethan's lips curved into a faint, ironic smile. "When you own the plane, yes, but this trip wasn't about leisure. Business, then? Not entirely." His eyes narrowed, studying her like she was a puzzle. "Tell me, Ava Collins, what were you running toward in Miami?" Ava blinked. His question sliced too close to the truth. She wanted to say vacation, sunshine, fun with my friend. But underneath, she had been running toward something harder to admit: escape. Escape from her double shifts, her empty apartment that still echoed with her parents' absence, the suffocating guilt of always being responsible. Instead, she said, "Just a weekend off, a break, that's all." Ethan's smirk softened into something almost kind. "Breaks are underrated." The cabin dimmed as the flight attendants prepared the space for the long haul. Ava wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly self-conscious in her thrift store jeans. Ethan, perfectly tailored, looked like he belonged to a different species. Yet when he spoke again, there was no arrogance, just a quiet heaviness. "You mentioned your sister," he said. "Lily, right?" Ava stiffened. "Yes, she's 17, finishing high school, and she depends on you." The way he said it, flat, certain, made Ava's throat tighten. "Our parents died 2 years ago. There wasn't anyone else. So, yeah, she depends on me for everything." Ethan's gaze dropped to his glass of whiskey. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then, "I lost someone too." The silence stretched. Ava didn't push. Instinct told her that his grief was fresh, raw, a wound he didn't share often. But the shift in his tone was enough to draw an invisible line between them, two people carrying ghosts on their backs. Hours into the flight, Ava found herself doing something she hadn't done in months. Laughing. It started small, when she described Lily's obsession with old movies and how she'd once tried to turn their living room into a 1950s diner with cardboard cutouts. Ethan listened, actually listened, then countered with a story about his failed attempt to cook pasta in college that ended with the fire alarm and a ruined saucepan. The laugh caught her by surprise, spilling out before she could stop it. It was rusty, but real. Ethan's expression softened, the hard edges of his billionaire mask melting away. "There it is," he murmured. I was starting to wonder if you'd forgotten how. Ava flushed. How what? How to laugh. His words landed heavier than she expected. And for a terrifying heartbeat, Ava felt seen, truly seen, in a way that made her want to both lean closer and run away. Later, while Ethan buried himself in work on a sleek laptop, Ava pulled out her phone. A quick search of his name filled the screen with headlines. Tech mogul Ethan Sterling withdraws from spotlight after partner's death. Sterling Industries faces uncertain future amidst CEO's silence. Billionaire genius or haunted recluse? Her stomach twisted. She hadn't misread his grief. And now, she wasn't just sitting across from a stranger. She was sitting across from a man the world speculated about. When Ethan noticed her gaze lingering on him, his mouth tightened. Go ahead, ask. Ava hesitated. Is it true about your business partner? His eyes darkened, and for a moment she thought he might shut down completely. But then he exhaled, slow and controlled. Mark Fitzgerald. He wasn't just my partner, he was my best friend. He died in a climbing accident last year. Since then, nothing's felt the same. The raw honesty in his voice made Ava's chest ache. She recognized it, the sharp edge of survivor's guilt, the endless what-ifs. It mirrored her own sleepless nights after her parents' accident. I'm sorry, she said softly. Ethan gave a short, humorless laugh. Everyone says that. You're the first one who actually sounds like you mean it. By the time the plane crossed into European airspace, Ava's exhaustion finally pulled her under. She drifted asleep in the wide leather seat, still clutching the blanket a flight attendant had draped over her. When she woke hours later, the sky outside was painted in strokes of pink and orange. Rome. She was really on her way to Rome. Ethan was still awake, scrolling through documents, but when she stirred, his eyes flicked toward her. For just a second, there was a softness there that startled her. Sleep well. Better than I have in years, Ava admitted before she could stop herself. His smile was small, but it reached his eyes. Good, you'll need your energy. Rome isn't a city that lets you rest. As the wheels touched down, Ava's panic surged back. Reality crashed in. Work shifts, Lily. Her responsibilities. This couldn't be her life. In the sleek black car waiting outside the terminal, Ethan gave her a choice. I can book you on the first flight back to New York, or, his gaze locked on hers. You could stay, just for tonight, see Rome, no strings. Ava's heart thundered. The responsible answer was obvious. Go home. Go back to the life she'd built around duty. But when the lights of the eternal city glittered through the car window, something inside her whispered of another possibility, a chance, however fleeting, to feel alive again. Her voice trembled when she spoke. Maybe just one night. Ethan's smile was almost imperceptible, but there was relief in it. One night, he echoed. Then it settled. The cobblestone streets of Rome glittered with a faint sheen from the late-night drizzle. Ava pressed her hands to the cool glass of the black town car, her wide eyes drinking in the unfamiliar world outside. Ancient ruins glowed under golden spotlights, narrow alleys twisted into darkness, and the city itself pulsed with a rhythm that felt centuries old yet alive. Ethan sat beside her, silent but watchful. In the shifting light, his sharp features seemed softer, almost human. Not the billionaire genius, not the man from the headlines, but simply someone who had once been a boy who dreamed of things money couldn't buy. The car pulled up to a luxury hotel near Piazza Venezia, its facade carved in marble, its chandeliers visible from the street. Ava's throat tightened. She had never stepped foot in a place like this. I can't stay here, she blurted. Ethan arched a brow. Why not? Because places like this aren't for people like me. Her voice cracked despite her effort to keep it steady. His reply was calm, steady. For tonight, you're not people like you. You're just Ava, and you deserve this as much as anyone. Against her better judgment, she let herself be guided inside. The suite was beyond imagination, Floor-to-ceiling windows, velvet drapes, a balcony that framed the city like a painting. When Ava stepped out onto the balcony, the entire city unfolded before her eyes. The Colosseum loomed in the distance, the Tiber River shimmered silver under the moonlight, and the air carried the scent of wet stone and jasmine. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Ethan leaned against the railing beside her, his gaze fixed on the same horizon. "You know, I used to stand here and think I owned all of this. The money, the views, the privilege. But lately I stand here and feel nothing." His confession startled her. For a moment, she saw the emptiness behind his wealth. "Maybe it's not about what you own," Ava said softly. "Maybe it's about who you share it with." He turned his head and their eyes locked. For the briefest second, the city wasn't what took his breath away, it was her. At sunrise, Ava woke to golden rays spilling through the curtains. She had barely slept. The strangeness of silk sheets and the echo of Ethan's words kept her restless. She found him already awake, seated at the dining table with coffee and a spread of food that looked like a magazine cover. He had changed into a crisp shirt, but his eyes carried the same heaviness. "Good morning," he said, his voice low, almost careful. "Hungry." She hesitated, then reached for a croissant. "I don't think I've ever had breakfast this fancy. Usually it's burnt toast on my way to work." Ethan's lips curved faintly. "You deserve more than burnt toast." It was such a simple line, but something in the way he said it made Ava's chest ache. By mid-morning, they slipped into the city like shadows. Ethan insisted on walking instead of being chauffeured. Rome wasn't meant to be seen through tinted glass, he said. They wandered through narrow alleys where laundry hung between windows like prayer flags, through markets alive with shouts of vendors selling olives and handmade leather. Ava's senses were overwhelmed. The tang of espresso, the laughter of children chasing pigeons, the rough stone under her fingertips when she trailed her hand along an ancient wall. Ethan guided her with surprising familiarity, ordering food in fluent Italian, exchanging nods with shopkeepers who seemed to know him. Yet his attention never strayed far from her, as though seeing the city through her awe brought it back to life for him too. "Why do they all treat you like an old friend?" Ava asked after a cafe owner kissed him on both cheeks. "I lived here for a while," Ethan admitted. "After college, before the company took over everything. Do you miss it?" He didn't answer immediately. His gaze swept the piazza where a violinist played under the open sky, and for a moment the mask of the billionaire slipped. "Every day," he said at last. As afternoon stretched into evening, the spell began to crack. They dined in a quiet trattoria tucked in a side street, the kind of place Ava knew she'd never have found alone. The food was simple but perfect. Candlelight flickered across the table, softening Ethan's sharp features. Yet as the waiter poured wine into glasses that probably cost more than Ava's monthly rent, the divide between their worlds pressed in. Ava thought of her sister Lily, probably microwaving leftover pizza back home, and her chest tightened with guilt. "This is wrong," she blurted suddenly. Ethan set down his fork, surprised. "What is?" "All of this. I shouldn't be here. I should be back home, with Lily, at work. Not." She gestured at the romantic candlelit table, "not pretending to be someone who belongs in your world." His voice was quiet but firm. "You're not pretending, you're just living, and for once you don't have to carry the weight of the world alone." She shook her head. "You don't understand. I can't just forget my responsibilities." Something flickered in his expression. Pain, recognition. "Actually," he said slowly, "I understand better than you think." Back at the hotel, Ava's curiosity got the better of her. While Ethan stepped out to take a call, she searched his name again. This time she clicked deeper: interviews, financial articles, speculation about his future. Headlines screamed across the screen. Ethan Sterling worth over $4 billion. Sterling Industries in crisis after Fitzgerald's death. Is Sterling ready to sell it all? A chill ran down her spine. He wasn't just wealthy, he wasn't just successful. He was one of the most powerful men in the world. When Ethan returned, he caught the glow of her phone. His eyes narrowed, then softened with resignation. "You Googled me." "I had to," Ava admitted, guilt flooding her voice. "I needed to know who I'm really sitting across from, and now you do." He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Does it change how you see me?" Ava wanted to say no. She wanted to pretend his billions didn't matter, that he was just a man with grief like hers, but the truth was heavier. "Yes," she whispered. "It does." That night, sleep refused to come. Ava lay awake, staring at the ornate ceiling, her mind spinning with images. Her sister struggling alone, Ethan's haunted eyes, the glittering city beyond the balcony. Somewhere in the suite, she heard Ethan pacing, restless too. They were two souls caught between worlds, hers ordinary and suffocating, his extraordinary and isolating. And though they had found comfort in each other for a fleeting moment, the question hung unspoken between them. How could they possibly belong together when everything about their lives screamed they shouldn't? The night pressed down heavy over Rome, the streets below alive with music and laughter. Yet in the luxury suite high above the city, silence sat thick between Ava and Ethan. She stood on the balcony, her arms wrapped around herself, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. Behind her, Ethan lingered near the door, his phone forgotten on the table, his gaze fixed on her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Finally, she broke the silence. "This isn't my life, Ethan. I don't belong here. I can't pretend this is normal." He stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "And what is your life, Ava? Burning yourself out in 12-hour shifts, worrying every second if the bills will get paid, carrying your sister's future like a weight chained to your neck." His words cut deep, too close to the truth. Ava spun to face him, anger and fear colliding in her chest. "That's my responsibility. Lily is my responsibility. If I don't hold it all together, everything falls apart." Ethan's expression softened, grief shadowing his features. "You think I don't understand responsibility? I built a company from nothing, and when Mark died, it wasn't just losing my best friend. It was watching thousands of employees look at me like their lives would collapse if I broke. And I did break. I've been breaking every day since." For a moment, Ava saw him not as a billionaire, not as the man in the headlines, but as another human drowning under the same invisible weight she carried. The next morning, tension clung to every word they exchanged. Over breakfast in the rooftop restaurant, the view of St. Peter's Basilica should have been breathtaking, but Ava barely tasted the food. "You need to understand," she said quietly. "I can't just stay here. My sister needs me. My job needs me." Ethan leaned forward, his eyes storm gray, unwavering. "And when do you get to need you? When do you stop living only for everyone else?" Ava flinched. The truth of it burned, but admitting it felt like betrayal to Lily, to the promises she had made to herself the night of the accident. "Some of us don't get to be selfish," she whispered. His jaw clenched. "That's not selfish. That's survival. Ava, you're killing yourself for everyone else and forgetting you exist too." Her throat tightened. She had no answer. In the afternoon, Ethan insisted on showing her the Colosseum. Tourists swarmed the ancient stone, cameras flashing, voices echoing against walls that had stood for centuries. Ava ran her fingers over the cold marble, imagining the lives that had played out here, glory, violence, tragedy. "All these years," she murmured, "and it still stands, even after everything." "Because it was built to last," Ethan said beside her. His gaze, though, wasn't on the Colosseum. It was on her. She pulled her hand away from the stone, uncomfortable under his intensity. "I'm not built to last, Ethan. I'm just trying to get through each day." He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "That's where you're wrong. You're stronger than anyone I've ever met. You carry more than anyone should have to, and you're still standing. That's extraordinary." Her chest tightened at his words, but she forced herself to look away. Compliments were dangerous. They made her forget reality. That evening, they found themselves in a quiet garden tucked behind an ancient church, cherry blossoms drifting like snow in the spring air. Ava sat on a stone bench, exhaustion pressing down on her, while Ethan stood pacing, his hands buried in his pockets. "You don't get it," Ava said finally, her voice breaking. "If I let myself want this, want you, it means risking everything I've fought to hold together. Lily, my job, my life back home. I can't gamble with that." Ethan stopped, his shoulders tense. Slowly, he turned to her, and for the first time, she saw raw vulnerability in his eyes. "I blame myself for Mark's death." His voice was quiet, ragged. "We were supposed to go climbing together, but I canceled for a meeting. If I had been there, maybe he wouldn't have fallen. Maybe he'd still be alive." Ava's breath caught. She recognized the tone, the guilt that gnawed no matter how many times people said it's not your fault. "You can't carry that forever," she whispered. His laugh was bitter. "I already am." Without thinking, Ava reached out and touched his hand. The warmth of his skin startled her, but she didn't pull away. "Grief isn't about what-ifs, Ethan. It's about learning to keep breathing even when it hurts." He stared at her, as though she had just cracked open a cage he had locked himself inside. Slowly, he sat beside her, their shoulders brushing. For the first time in months, maybe years, his breathing eased. The drive back to the hotel was quiet, both of them lost in their own storms. When they arrived, Ethan turned to her with a resolve that made her heart race. "Don't fly back tomorrow," he said. Ava blinked. "What?" "Stay, just 2 more days. I have a house outside the city, peaceful, no crowds, just us. If after that you want to leave, I'll put you on the first flight home myself." Her heart thundered. The responsible voice screamed, "Say no, go home, don't risk it." But another voice whispered of something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. "I can't," she started, but her protest was weak. "Why not?" He pressed, his eyes searching hers. "Your sister is with your aunt. Your next shift isn't until Monday. What's stopping you, Ava? Fear." Her breath caught. He wasn't wrong. Fear was exactly what was stopping her. Fear of wanting too much, of losing herself, of breaking her promise to always be the responsible one. She faltered. Ethan leaned closer, his voice almost a plea. "Stay, just 2 more days. Let yourself see what life could be." Back in her room, Ava stood by the window, staring out at the glowing city. Her phone buzzed, a message from Lily. "You okay? Aunt Marcy's making me eat broccoli again. Come home soon." Tears blurred Ava's eyes. She typed back, "I'm okay. I'll be home before you know it." But when she set the phone down, her gaze fell to the silver Eiffel Tower pendant Ethan had placed on the nightstand earlier. She hadn't put it on, but its presence was a reminder of something fragile, something possible. Her reflection in the glass looked like 2 people. The dutiful sister bound by obligation, and the woman who longed to breathe, to feel, to be seen. And for the first time, she wondered which one she really wanted to be. The road twisted away from the bustle of Rome, each mile carrying them deeper into the Italian countryside. Cypress trees lined the hills like sentinels, vineyards stretched as far as the eye could see, and the golden afternoon light bathed everything in warmth. Ava sat in the back seat beside Ethan, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She still wasn't sure if she'd made the right decision. 2 more days. That was what she had promised herself. Just 2. But the way her pulse raced, whenever Ethan glanced her way, told her that even 2 days might change everything. The car pulled into a long, stone-paved driveway, ending at a villa that looked like it belonged to another century. Its walls were built of pale stone, ivy crawling up to the windows, terracotta roofs glowing under the sun. "Home," Ethan said softly, though his tone carried both pride and something like guilt. "At least one of them." Ava's lips parted in awe. "You actually live here." "Sometimes," he admitted, helping her out of the car. "Mostly when I need to remember what peace feels like." Inside, the villa was even more breathtaking, arched ceilings, frescoes faded with time, a library that smelled of leather and old paper, and windows that opened to sweeping views of the vineyards. Yet despite its grandeur, there was a warmth to it. The scent of fresh bread wafted from the kitchen where an elderly woman greeted Ethan with a fond kiss on the cheek. "This is Signora Lucia," Ethan introduced. "She takes care of the house." The woman's eyes twinkled as she turned to Ava. Finally, someone who makes him smile again. Ava flushed scarlet, but Ethan didn't correct her. That evening, they shared a meal in the villa's courtyard. Fresh pasta, roasted vegetables, wine that tasted of sun and soil. Ava found herself laughing again, the sound echoing against stone walls that had heard centuries of conversations before hers. After dinner, they walked through the gardens. Fireflies blinked between lavender bushes, and the night air hummed with crickets. Ava tilted her head back to the star-filled sky. "It feels unreal," she whispered. "Like I stepped out of my life into someone else's dream." Ethan studied her quietly. "Maybe it's not someone else's dream. Maybe it's yours too." The words made her chest tighten. She didn't know if she wanted to believe him or run from him. The next morning, they visited the village nearby. Cobblestone streets twisted between stone cottages, and locals greeted Ethan like an old friend. He bought Ava fresh figs from a market stall, and she laughed when the juice dripped down her fingers. But as they sat at a small cafe, the illusion cracked. A couple at the next table whispered, glancing at Ethan, their eyes darting toward Ava with open judgment. She caught fragments of their Italian, words like ragazza commune, ordinary girl, non all'altezza, not good enough. Ava's stomach twisted. She wasn't naive, she knew she didn't belong in his world, but hearing it aloud stung worse than she expected. Ethan noticed her silence. "Ignore them. That's easy for you to say," she muttered. His brows drew together. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm the one they're laughing at. I'm the mistake in their perfect picture of you." Ethan's voice sharpened. "You're not a mistake," but the doubt in Ava's chest was louder than his words. Back at the villa, Ava wandered into the library trying to lose herself among the books. Ethan found her there, standing by the window, her reflection fractured in the glass. "You're quiet," he said softly. "Because I don't know what I'm doing here," she admitted. "You live in this world of mansions and private planes, and her voice cracked. "I can't even afford to buy my sister a proper birthday present." Ethan stepped closer, his voice low, earnest. "Do you think any of this matters to me? The money, the houses, the headlines, it's all noise. What matters is this." He reached out, gently tilting her chin until their eyes met. "You, the way you see the world, the way you carry responsibility like it's both your curse and your crown, that's what matters." Her breath hitched. For a moment, the rest of the world fell away. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I," he admitted. "But maybe we can be scared together." The fire crackled in the villa's grand fireplace that night. Ava and Ethan sat close on the couch, glasses of wine forgotten on the table. Conversation had drifted from stories of childhood to dreams they'd buried long ago. Silence settled, heavy with unspoken words. Ethan's hand brushed hers, tentative, testing. Ava's heart raced, but she didn't pull away. Slowly, he leaned closer, his gaze searching hers for permission. Ava felt the warmth of his breath, the pull of something inevitable. For a moment, she thought she might let go of all the fear and fall into him. But then Lily's face flashed in her mind, her sister waiting at home, counting on her. Ava pulled back suddenly, her voice trembling. "I can't." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "I won't push, but know this, I've never wanted something more than I want you right now." Later, alone in her room, Ava's phone buzzed, a video call from Lily. Her sister's cheerful face filled the screen. "You look different, happier, where are you?" Ava hesitated, then admitted, "Italy." Lily's jaw dropped. "Italy? How? With who?" Ava dodged the question with a laugh. Long story, I'll explain later. Are you okay? I'm fine, Lily said, then grew serious. But you look alive again. Whoever you're with, don't push them away just because you're scared. Ava's throat tightened. Her little sister, still a child in so many ways, sounded wiser than she felt. When she hung up, Ava found Ethan waiting in the hallway. He didn't speak, just held out his hand. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. They walked into the garden, moonlight washing over them. Ethan's voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the vulnerability beneath. I don't know where this is going, Ava, but I know what I feel when I'm with you. For the first time in a long time, I don't feel like I'm drowning. Her chest ached. And when I go back, when real life pulls me away, then I'll follow, he said simply. Her breath caught. She wanted to believe him, but fear still coiled inside her. Yet as the night stretched around them, she couldn't deny the truth. This man, this impossible man, had already changed her life. Morning sunlight spilled into the villa, golden and soft, yet heavy with unspoken goodbyes. Ava stood at the window of her guest room, her suitcase already packed. Below, the gardens stretched toward the hills, peaceful and timeless, as if mocking the storm inside her chest. 2 days, that was what she had promised herself. And now the 2 days were gone. A knock sounded at the door. Ethan, his voice low, almost careful. Ready? She turned, forcing a smile. As ready as I'll ever be. The car rolled through winding country roads back toward Rome. Ethan sat beside her, his usual composure cracking around the edges. He kept glancing at her as if trying to memorize her face, her presence, as if afraid she might vanish when the plane doors closed. Neither spoke much. The silence wasn't hostile. It was heavier than that. It was the weight of knowing something had begun between them that neither of them knew how to end, nor how to continue. When the city skyline reappeared, Ava's stomach clenched. Reality was waiting. Inside the private lounge at the airport, staff moved discreetly, offering champagne and fresh fruit. Ava couldn't touch any of it. She sat stiffly, her fingers twisting the silver Eiffel Tower pendant Ethan had given her. Ethan stood near the window, hands in his pockets, his gaze fixed on the runways below. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. These past few days, they were the first time in over a year that I felt alive again, and that's because of you. Ava swallowed hard. Don't say that. You'll forget me in a week. You'll go back to boardrooms and meetings and headlines, and I'll go back to night shifts and overdue bills. He turned sharply, crossing the room to kneel in front of her, his storm-gray eyes locking onto hers. Don't you dare reduce what we had to some passing distraction. Ava, I don't want to forget you. I don't want to go back to who I was before I met you. Her throat burned with tears she refused to let fall. Ethan, our worlds are too different. Then I'll bridge them, he said fiercely. I'll fly to New Jersey every weekend if I have to. I'll sit in your tiny apartment, eat burnt toast, whatever it takes. I don't care where we are as long as it's with you. Ava's resolve wavered dangerously. When the boarding announcement came, the sound felt like a blade slicing through the fragile cocoon they'd built. At the gate, Ethan pulled her close, his hands cupping her face as if she were something fragile and irreplaceable. His kiss was deep, desperate, full of everything words couldn't say. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, he whispered against her skin, "This isn't goodbye, it's see you soon." Her tears spilled then, hot and unstoppable. Don't make promises you can't keep. I don't break promises, he said, his voice steady despite the storm in his eyes. She turned and walked towards security, each step heavier than the last. She didn't dare look back until the last moment when she saw him still standing there, watching her go, his figure etched into her memory like a scar she would never erase. New Jersey felt smaller than ever when Ava stepped out of the black car. Ethan had arranged to take her home. Her apartment building loomed, familiar, worn, the polar opposite of the villa she had just left behind. Inside, Lily was waiting with open arms. "You're back!" Ava hugged her tightly, breathing in the comfort of her sister's presence. Yet even as she held her, she knew part of her heart was still in Rome, still walking through vineyards and candle-lit gardens with Ethan Sterling. The days that followed slipped into routine, hospital shifts, bills, late-night ramen dinners, but something inside Ava had shifted. She no longer moved like a woman crushed under duty. She moved like someone who had tasted a different kind of life and couldn't unsee it. On the third evening after her return, her phone rang. Unknown number. Ava almost didn't answer, but when she did, her heart stumbled at the sound of his voice. Ava, she sank onto the couch. Ethan, I told you I don't break promises. Her throat closed. You're here. Yes, he said softly. At your door. A frantic knock echoed a second later. Ava flew to open it, and there he was, no suit, no billionaire armor, just jeans, a simple shirt, and a bouquet of wildflowers clutched in his hand. Lily peeked out from her room, her eyes wide. Is that him? Ava's laughter broke through her tears. Yes, Lil, that's him. Ethan stepped forward, holding the flowers like an offering. I told you I'd follow. I'm not going anywhere, Ava, not unless you tell me to. In that moment, Ava realized the truth. Life had already been hard. It would always be hard, but maybe she didn't have to face it alone. Maybe love wasn't about choosing between duty and desire. It was about finding someone who understood both, who would stand beside her in the chaos. She reached for his hand, her voice trembling but certain. Then stay. Let's try. One day at a time. Relief and joy lit Ethan's face in a way she had never seen before. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were the only thing tethering him to the earth. And for the first time since the accident that had shattered her life, Ava let herself believe in the possibility of more. More love, more joy, more than just survival. Weeks later, Ava found herself walking hand in hand with Ethan through a park near her apartment. Lily skipped ahead, laughing, snapping photos of the spring blossoms. Ethan leaned down, whispering against Ava's ear. You know, sometimes the wrong gate takes us exactly where we were meant to be. Ava smiled, her heart full. Maybe mistakes aren't mistakes at all. Maybe they are destiny. And as the sun dipped behind the horizon, Ava knew one thing for certain. She had boarded the wrong plane that day, but it had flown her straight into the life she was always meant to live. When I look back on Ava's story, I don't just see a nurse who boarded the wrong plane. I see a woman who carried the weight of the world on her shoulders, yet still had the courage to open her heart. And Ethan, the billionaire who seemed to have everything, reminded us that wealth can never replace the healing power of genuine connection. From them, I've learned this. Sometimes the mistakes we fear the most become the doors to our destiny. Life will always demand responsibility, sacrifice, and strength, but we must never forget that our hearts deserve space for love, for joy, for second chances. And maybe that's the lesson for all of us. True healing begins when we stop surviving and start living. So I'll leave you with a question. Have you ever had a moment that felt like a mistake at first, but later turned out to change your life forever? Share it in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. Sparkles if you find this story meaningful and want to help us share these important values. Please subscribe to our channel so you won't miss the next inspiring story. Together, we can build a strong community full of potential and a spirit of justice.